Toyota Material Handling is now providing a factory rebate of up to $2,500 when you trade in a Toyota or a competitive unit. Now, through September 30th, 2024, trade in your forklift and get a new industry-leading Toyota forklift. This rebate applies to electric and internal combustion models. Unlock your upgrade today by visiting toyotaforklift.com. That's toyotaforklift.com, or click the link in the show notes.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hello and welcome to the New Warehouse Podcast. This is a very special episode. We're celebrating a little today. This is our 500th podcast episode. That's 500. I cannot believe myself that I'm saying those words. This is pretty incredible for me still to wrap my head around, that I'm still doing this thing 5 years later and 500 episodes later too, as well. And if you're not familiar, maybe this is the first time you're catching the podcast. I am Kevin Lawton. I'm the host of the New Warehouse Podcast here, and I am alone today because I want to reflect back on these 500 episodes, this journey that I've been on through the podcast and through the warehousing industry in general. And first, I want to say thank you to you, the listener, for tuning in at some point over the last 500 episodes. If you've listened to all 500 episodes up to this point, I want to say a special thank you. It is so much content, and I really appreciate you tuning in over time. And if you've only caught a couple episodes, or maybe only caught 100, however many, I appreciate you for listening and digesting this content. I hope that we've been able to deliver value. I started this because I wanted to learn more about the industry. I wanted to get more connected in the industry. I did not start out my career thinking that I would be in the warehousing industry now 13 years later from when I started my career. Didn't go to school for supply chain, anything like that, and just kind of fell into it, as I think, most of us probably do within the industry, whether it's warehousing or supply chain in general. That seems to be the case, as I'm sure many of you can relate who are listening. But it's been an incredible journey to kind of learn more about the industry and find that educational component in an interesting way. I know when I started the podcast, the reason was because I wanted to learn. And so it was a little self-serving in a sense, you could say. And I think quickly after, I started to realize that other people wanted to learn more too. And they wanted to learn in a different way because there was no real podcast specifically for warehousing at the time. This is back in 2019 when we released the first episode. Shout out to Bruce Welty, the first guest ever on the podcast. I have to say a big thank you to him for just responding to this guy's cold message on LinkedIn to be on this podcast idea that I had back then. And now actually that is our most downloaded and listened to episode ever, which I think is rightfully so. Episode 1, that makes sense. Even though the quality probably is terrible compared to what we put out now, but great episode. If you get a chance, I highly recommend listening to that. If you're not familiar with Bruce Welty, he is one of the founders of Locus Robotics and Quiet Logistics. So definitely check it out. But it's been an incredible journey over the last 5 years to be able to continue to deliver this content, continue to learn, connect with people in the industry like you, and really grow myself as an individual and really open my eyes to just the amazing things that are happening within the warehouse industry. And quickly after I started, I realized that this could be a great resource for the industry. And we're continuing to improve, continuing to grow on that and evolve what we do here at the new warehouse. And it's been great to see the response, whether there's been a big response or sometimes no response too. Keep it real here on some of the things we've tried to do and put out there. But it's been great to see that and kind of have that feedback almost immediately and over time and see what do people really resonate with and what makes sense to them as the listener or the person that's digesting that content to learn from and get value from. So it's been great to have that transformation over the last 5 years and these 500 episodes to do that. So I took some time and I put a post on LinkedIn too as well, which got an amazing amount of appreciation and love. And thank you so much to everyone that's been a part of this journey as well. Again, from the listener yourself to the guests that have been on as well, and the sponsors too, of course, who help keep the lights on, as they say. So as I reflect back on the 500 episodes, I will say that one thing for sure is that this was, and I probably don't talk about this too much. I probably mentioned it a couple of times on the podcast or on LinkedIn or other people's podcasts as I've been a guest, but it was certainly a way to step outside my comfort zone. I previously was not very comfortable with public speaking, comfortable just going to a networking event and just going up to people that I don't know and trying to talk to them and get to know them. I was not comfortable probably doing this, even what I'm doing right now would be kind of nerve-wracking to me. So it's been a great way to do that. And I think the takeaway there that I want to give to you is that stepping outside your comfort zone can be such a relieving thing after time. At first, you certainly get those butterflies in your stomach. You get that nervousness. Maybe you start sweating a little bit. I think when I first started this, or even when I first maybe went live too as well, I mean, the sweat dripping down my back was crazy. Maybe that's a little too much there to share, but I mean, it's real. And I want to be authentic here about this. And I think, being able to step outside your comfort zone can take you to the next level. And it's certainly taken me to the next level. I'm here, recording this solo, not relying on anybody else, and, talking to you and being able to do this. And now also having speaking engagements at different conferences and trade shows and getting out there and just increasing my network just insanely through the podcast and through just going out to people and trying to learn what they're doing in the industry, because it's extremely important to know. And I think our industry is, one of the most important out there. I mean, we move everything, right? Everything that you have comes to you because of the warehousing, logistics, and supply chain industry. So we're in a great, very important spot to be in. But I want to encourage you to step outside that comfort zone. I know that when I feel those butterflies in my stomach, I know that, yes, I'm a little scared, I'm a little nervous, but I know that afterwards, what I'm about to do is going to have great dividends and is going to pay off in the long run now, because I've ventured into this podcast and put myself out there in a way that probably 10 years ago, I would never do. Or I maybe would need to have a couple drinks to be able to do something like that. So it's been incredible to be able to do that from a self-development perspective. And I appreciate you for listening, tuning in, and allowing me to do that. And, obviously the encouragement, the value that people take away from it is certainly a motivator to keep going with this for, maybe another 500 episodes, another 5 years, who knows? But the other takeaway is that I've had a front row seat to see all of the advancements in technologies over the last 5 years. I mean, when I started this podcast in 2019, I went to ProMat in 2019. I do want to say a big thank you to MHI, certainly, because they embraced me early on as somebody who just started a podcast a month before ProMat and is asking for a press pass. And that really was a big catalyst to get a lot of traction going with the podcast. But going to that ProMat 2019, I mean, seeing the technology leaps and bounds in the last 5 years has just been incredible. And I keep coming back to the same thought that...
We'll be back after a quick break.
I hope you're enjoying this episode. Do you want more warehouse content delivered to your inbox? Sign up for our new email series called Warehouse Wisdom Wednesday to get an educational series of emails on warehouse basics delivered directly to you every Wednesday morning. Find the sign up link in the show notes. There is this cutting edge technology that's out there in the world in general that people see. Certainly probably the most prevalent recently is AI has just come into everybody's life because of ChatGPT is, just become a household name at this point. And, everybody has exposure to this. There's awareness around this. We see humanoid robots are catching people's attention. We have them on the news, the regular news. Supply chain is being talked about all the time since the pandemic. But some of these cutting edge technologies, whether they're developed for our industry initially or not, they're finding practical applications within our industry, which I think is probably the most exciting, most incredible thing that keeps me interested in the industry is that we are this ongoing presence and we'll be here for a long time to come because people need their goods, as I mentioned earlier. But I think it's also incredible to see that this technology always finds practical applications within our industry. And I think it's really exciting to be on sort of the forefront of that in a sense and be able to see how these things are coming into practical uses and how people within the warehousing industry are leveraging them and being able to bring these kind of smart solutions to processes that we've been doing for a very long time, but now figuring out how to do them in a smarter way, how to make the workforce's lives better overall. And I think that's really, really an important thing within the warehousing industry. I'm a big proponent for that. And I think it's just been incredible to see that. And it's great to see, I kind of get a very close-up look. I get to talk to a lot of these people doing some of these incredible things and innovations within the industry through the podcast. And I'm happy to have the vehicle to do this and happy to bring those conversations to you as well. But it's really an amazing space, an exciting space to be in. And I'll say that, going into starting the podcast, I certainly had more of an interest, but I will say I'm more interested now than ever that I've been able to have that exposure. And I think it's an incredible position to be in because you have situations where you get stuck in a sense in your career maybe, and you don't get that exposure to those different things. So it's been great to create something where people can get these smaller bite-sized podcast episodes or videos that we put out or some of the LinkedIn posts I do or put out there and be able to share that with, that warehouse manager or that warehouse worker on the floor that's maybe otherwise wouldn't necessarily have exposure like that unless they really went and did some digging. And that was kind of the position that I was in before I started the podcast. And, I kind of always go back to, okay, when I was that inventory control manager at the time, what would I want to learn about? What would make my day easier? What would make my operation run better? What would make my employees, have an easier day or think about things in a different way? So I always kind of take that approach when I have the interviews and the conversations, and I hope that you appreciate that. And I hope that delivers value as well to you. And I would say my third takeaway from these 500 episodes in the podcast as well is just the amazing community that exists within the industry. I think it's been incredible to see that the industry has embraced me so much, and I want to thank everyone that has, from end user perspective to solution provider perspective to the conferences, the trade shows, the MHIs, the works, the manifest. I want to thank you guys so much for always giving me kind of a place to be at some of these conferences and facilitating me being there to be able to talk to some of these people doing really incredible things within the industry. And it's just been incredible to embrace and seeing too, more content creators coming into the space and podcasts coming into the space. It's been great to collaborate with them and have them on the show, be on their shows. There's just so much amazing things going on with the community. So, be sure to reach out to people if you want to connect with them, and, don't be afraid to send them a message. I found that probably 99% of people in the industry. I won't say 100% because obviously, there's some people out there that, aren't receptive to cold messages and things like that. But 99% of people, they want to help. They want to learn more too. They want to see, how can they collaborate or work together or just get to know each other. I think it's a great community. So definitely do not hold back from being out there and connecting and networking with people to be able to learn more and advance yourself in the industry. So those are probably my 3 takeaways. I don't want to go on and on and on for this episode from 500 episodes. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about kind of what's next for the New Warehouse podcast. We've certainly been evolving more and more. We've gone all in on video. If you're seeing this on video, then you know that. Probably you can subscribe to our YouTube channel for sure. If you're listening to this on audio and don't know, but every episode is also on video, and we do have some exclusive interviews as well from some of the trade shows and things like that on our YouTube channel only, actually. So smart to subscribe. But what's next? We've been evolving. We've been adding new components. We've been going live a lot more on LinkedIn as well with some live podcasts, which has been really fun. Audio podcasts where actually you, the listener, if you're tuned in, can talk. You can ask questions as well. So I'm really excited about that interaction aspect, and we're going to be pushing that more and more. And I hope that you'll join us for some of those live sessions to be able to give your thoughts, ask questions. You actually, essentially become a guest of the podcast as well. So if you're ever wondering how to be a guest, that's one easy way to do it. That's a little hack right there. But we're definitely pushing another 500 episodes. I'm sure we'll probably do over the next couple of years here. And we're definitely going to be doing more of those live streams that I mentioned. We're also going to start doing some webinars as well. One of the things I think has been the biggest feedback, I will say, and takeaway from you, the listener, as I've met you out there at trade shows, conferences, events, talked to you on LinkedIn, through email, whatever the case may be, is that when you entered into the industry, if you came from a different industry, you found the podcast as a source to learn more about the warehousing industry. And I think that's an amazing thing. That's certainly something that I had hoped for and was hoping for, but to hear that feedback is great to hear because, just a testament to some of the value that we're putting out there in the space. And from that, I think it makes sense for us to naturally focus on more education as well. So we'll be starting to do some educational webinars by the end of this year, probably starting maybe in August or September. We're kind of talking to some people about what some of those topics might look like. We'll be focusing on some webinars in addition to the live streams and the regular podcast too. We'll be adding some educational components beyond that too as well. If you haven't seen yet, we have started Warehouse Wisdom Wednesdays. So every Wednesday on my LinkedIn page, my personal LinkedIn page, I am sharing some warehouse basics. So far as of this recording, we've done the different types of warehouses. We've talked about the yard, and most recently we've talked about the dock as well. So we're going to go through all the basics of the warehouse because I think that's something as people come into the industry, they need to know because maybe they come into the industry and now they're working for software or a solution that's focused on the dock only, right? But what happens before the dock? What happens after the dock? That should be something that everybody has access to and should be able to know. So in addition to those posts, I'm also doing an email series. You can subscribe to Warehouse Wisdom Wednesdays, and there's a link in the show notes here for you to do that as well. But I share that link every Wednesday as well with those LinkedIn posts. So make sure you subscribe if you want to get those warehouse basics delivered to you every Wednesday, and we'll be going through that series, and it'll be somewhat of almost an email course on warehouse basics. So I hope that that's valuable to you and you find interest in that. We've had a lot of great feedback already just over the last 3 weeks now that we've been doing it. And we'll probably be taking that a step further at some point later this year as well, with some on-demand digital online courses where we'll be focusing on those warehouse basics, talking about some other training aspects, development aspects for warehouse managers, and lots of different ideas brewing up here. So stay tuned for those, and those will definitely be coming out. And I think too that I want to dive into a little more of the solo episodes as well. When I look at their top 5 listened episodes ever, actually, one of them is a solo episode, just me talking about warehouse standards, and another very highly listened to episode was me as well, solo. And I want to be able to focus more on some of that education component as well. And I think that'll result in some solo episodes coming up as well, especially as we go into the new year. So we'll be focusing on education and then also putting a spotlight on solutions as we've done all along as well, but really helping people to, get some of those nuances of the warehouse and probably bringing in some additional thought leaders or influencers, whatever you want to call them, from the industry that have grown and popped up on LinkedIn as well into some of those conversations from their experiences. So really looking forward to being able to bring that educational component to it. And I think it's super exciting for me, and I hope it's exciting for you as well. I think, it's something that everybody can gain some value from and find something that makes sense for what they're doing. So in addition, coming up next, I will be at Parcel Forum in September. I will be with InstaWork speaking there for a presentation. And then, of course, we're going to be back at Manifest in 2025. Very excited for that. They keep growing that thing. And man, if you're not going to be there, then I don't know what you're going to be doing, but you should be there for sure. And we're going to be at ProMat, taking it back to kind of where it all began back in 2019. We'll be back at ProMat, and we will be doubling the size of our booth in 2025, which is amazing news. I can't believe that, honestly. And we have some exciting things planned. We're looking into some interesting ideas of what we can do with that extra space. And of course, we'll be live streaming from both of those events. So if you can't be there in person, we're going to give you a little taste of what's going on live from the show itself. So if you're going to be at any of those conferences, make sure you let me know, reach out, and we'll be happy to see you there for sure. So before I kind of close this out, this 500th episode here, big thank you to you again as a listener. But I do want to thank my team that we've kind of developed and built over the last couple years here as we've been pushing out tons and tons of content. And a lot of people have been asking me, how do we do this much content? Well, it's because the team that I have, and I want to say a special thank you to Eric, who does all of the audio editing and production. He has actually been with me the longest, started as an intern, and I am very thankful for him because he's stayed along, helped me all along the way from the audio side. And then Mariah, who is my assistant coordinator on the podcast. She does all the scheduling. She does a lot of the social media clip work, a lot of the social media posting, email coordination. She kind of keeps it all together and keeps everybody together, I think, on the team as well. And then Mike, of course, who is our writer, fabulous writer. He writes all the blog posts you see at thenewwarehouse.com. He writes the show notes. He's a fantastic writer, comes from the industry too as well. So his knowledge is great on that side too. Of course, Ricky, who you've probably met if you've been at one of the conferences, does all our video work. He edited this video right here if you're watching the video. And then Carolina too as well, who does all our graphic design work. So thank you very much to the team. I appreciate you for helping us get to this amazing milestone of 500 episodes. And I want to thank you once again to the listener. Now, if you want to support us, you found value within the podcast and the episodes that we've put out there and the content we continue to put out there. The one thing that you can always help us with and always help us do is share the podcast with your colleagues. If your colleagues have not heard of the podcast, share it. The more people that can listen to it, the better for us, the more value we can drive overall. You can also be a subscriber to the podcast, which you can find in the show notes, and you'll become a VIP listener, which helps to cover a lot of our support costs and things like that. So if you're open to doing that, you can certainly do that. And of course, one of the taglines that's come out of the podcast and kind of stuck a little bit is warehouses are sexy. So you can see behind me, got the warehouses are sexy t-shirt. You can see on me, I'm wearing mine today too, as well, of course, celebrating 500 episodes. But you can get your Warehouses Are Sexy merch and the Warehouses Are Sexy t-shirt at warehousesaresexy.com. Yes, I bought that domain. So be sure to go on there, get your t-shirt, and I hope to see you in the t-shirt at one of the future conferences or just post it on social media. We love to see it. So once again, thank you so much for allowing me to take this journey, being here with me at some point through the journey, whether your journey is starting today with this episode or it started way back at episode 1. I appreciate you so much, and I will see you in the next podcast episode and hopefully at a future conference or on the LinkedIn streets.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.